grass particles. Now let's first paint a grass texture. So what we'll do first, we'll get out of texture paint and we go to object mode. Then with the slash key on the numpad go out of local mode. Might you be still in there? Drag around if you are looking through the camera and then select the floor plane and hit delete. Now let's zoom in on the well. We don't really need it at the moment, but let's keep it here. In the image editor we have our main texture in the texture slot, but we want an empty texture slot so we can make a new one. So we first have to click on the X here or the cross, and that will empty our texture slot. Zoom in a bit and make a new texture. Let's name it T underscore grass underscore BC, you guessed it, for base color. Now the texture doesn't need to be this big, so let's make that 256 pixels instead of 1024 for both the width and height. Now this time we need the alpha, so let's keep it on and even make the background transparent by dragging the alpha to 0. Hit OK. We see a checkerboard here, that means the texture is transparent. Now before we start painting, I want to have the grass particle exactly in the middle of this texture, but there's no grid here. So how do we know what the middle is? I have a fix for that. The trick is to unwrap a UV map and put it over this texture so it looks like a grid. So let's do that. Let's go to the 3D viewport here. It doesn't matter where the cursor is. Hit Shift A to add a mesh and let's add a plane. So mesh plane. Then go to edit mode by hitting tab or go to the menu on top. Make sure that all the vertices are selected, so hit A. Then click on your right mouse button and choose Subdivide. Now we have the operators panel below here. Click on the triangle to open it. And now we have our plane divided in 4 parts, but we want to have a little bit more, so the number of cuts should be higher. It's 1 now, let's make that 3. Now look from the top. And that looks like a nice grid to me. Now we can unwrap this by hitting U on the numpad. Click on unwrap. And we should have a grid here now, but we don't see it, so let's go to paint. And then to view. And then here, display texture paint UVs. Et voila! Now there is a small margin there. We can fix that by going to margin in the operator panel again here. And set that on 0. I get an error, I don't know why, but let's ignore that. Because it still works and now we have a nice grid where we can paint a grass particle on. Make sure you stay in edit mode. Because when you go back to object mode, the grid disappears. Tap object mode, no grid. And tap edit mode, yes grid. OK. Now on the image editor, do shift space to focus on the image editor. Let's hit N to go to the tools menu. The second menu. Tools. And let's choose the hard brush. Let's put the space on 10, that's correct. Fall off, looks good as well. Let's put the strength on 1, turn pressure sensitivity off and radius sensitivity on. And then let's make a dark green bluish color. And that's because we are making the shadow part of the grass first. So the parts that are not catching any light and parts that are in the shadow are a little bit bluer than parts that are catching sun. Now I'll start painting, but before I do, I will switch to my pen tablet so you'll see a small glitch in the screen resolution. And I'll start painting in the grass straw. I'll start with little pressure and then build the pressure up. And there we go. Let's make it a little bit thicker. Bigger brush, more pressure. Okay, that's good. Let's make a second straw. A third one. And the fourth one. Now we'll make the value higher. And we'll also go to the yellow because we are making the parts that are catching sun. Let's see if this works. Let's turn off the radius sensitivity and turn on the pressure sensitivity. And have a strength of 0.7. And instead of drawing the straws at once, let's paint the lighter color in now. Just so I can make more variation and give it this more painty look. So let's go out of this focus mode. I'm still in edit mode here, so let's hit tab to go to object mode, hit divide to get out of the focus mode from the plane we have here, and let's have a look at the well, because I want to compare the hue of the cross particle with the hue of the well. Let's see if these colors are matching. The green parts here and the green parts there, they look pretty much the same to me. They look as if they could fit together. We can delete the plane now because we don't need it anymore. We don't need the grid anymore. We use it for the grid, remember? So let's delete that and let's start painting again. So we'll paint in these more yellow and lighter parts, and don't paint over all the dark parts, because that's what's representing the shadows. That's giving depth. So follow the shape and leave some dark parts on the sides. You don't need to drag all the way down because we need a darker part at the bottom. So here. Okay, let's pick some dark parts here and draw it back in again. Light again. A lighter again. Okay, let's see, what have we got? Looking good to me. I think the color fits good to the well. Always do that, compare hue and values, because else you will have parts of a model or of a scene sticking out. And comparing hues and values gives you a consistent workflow. And remember, what we are doing now again is hue, value and edges. It's still the same as with the well. That's the base of our workflow. Now let's make the bottom a little bit darker. So pick a dark color and paint that in again, and then pick a color in between and drag that up a bit, and that way we'll make a gradient. You can do it with the soft brush, of course, but this way it gives more variety and a more painterly look. And that's what I am aiming for here. If you want to have a more sterile look, then you can use the soft brush if you want. You can keep color picking and drawing like this for hours, but at some point you have to say, I'm done, this is what it is. As the famous Jake Parker once said, finished, not perfect. You may know him from Inktober. If not, I recommend googling him. Anyway, let's add some variation now. So let's bring the color to the red and add some subtle variation in there. Remember, from the well, we did it there as well. Well. I had an example with an apple as well. Again, if you don't want to do this, you can skip this part, but it's just something I like to do because I think it does improve my texture. Make it a little bit greener. Neutralize it a bit. Just some spots here and there. Then let's go to the blue side. A little bit lighter maybe. More neutral. So almost gray. But when you paint it in, it almost looks blue or purple. That's just the way color works, as I explained in previous lectures. So let's go to the pinky parts now. And try to follow the direction of the straw. So like this, not like this. Not like a perpendicular angle. And you can leave out the darker parts. Darker parts don't get that much detail because you don't see it anyway. Now let's smear the colors out a bit again by picking colors and painting them in again. Just to get rid of the hardest edges. You can leave some in there, that's no problem. On the edge you can also make this edge a little bit softer. Something like this, for example, if you want to have a softer transition. You can do it on parts, not everywhere, just to give more variation. And the fun thing is that when you do this, you can only do it your way, and that is what I think makes it your painting, that gives it your character. So I can give you these techniques, but I can't learn you how to give your painting character, but these things really help. Because there's only one person who can do it like you do it, and that's you. So that's the difference between childish paintings, because anyone can paint an apple in one value, but when you start adding variation, you give it your own character. Next to making it more interesting, it also gives you your signature. So again, we did shape, value, added some color variation. And the next thing we can do is adding some detail. So let's color pick a darker part. Here, for example. And then zoom in. And draw some lines following the straws, like so. Think of it as the nerves. That's probably the most detail you get in a grass particle, unless you would use a microscope to look at it. But for this purpose, this is the most detail we'll make. I made a small mistake here, but I'll fix that later. You can use the Erase Alpha for that later on. Okay. Now let's make a lighter version of that as well. It's kind of like the wood, but less curly. Try to stay next to the darker lines we made before. Don't be too precise. It'll just make everything pop a little bit more. Pop, pop. There's one tip I want to give you, and that's pretty important, because we are making grass particles, so we'll make a lot of copies of this painting. And when you have something that's sticking out, so for example a hole here, it will be sticking out on all the particles that we make later on. All the copies will then look the same. So make this painting, this particle painting, make it very generic. Okay, something like that. So let's correct this part here. Let's go to Erase Alpha. Make the brush a little bit bigger and turn pressure sensitivity off, and then draw in there. You can delete the tops here as well, because grass might have tops like that, I don't know. It looks nice, so let's keep it like this. In the end we are making stylized objects, so Okay, now let's add a gradient here at the bottom. We did it with the well as well. That is to give more depth. Let's put the hard brush on mix. And let's go to the fill tool. It is already on gradient here. Let's make the left color dark green. Like so. So make it a little bit darker. So we have a gradient from dark green to transparent. And now let's make this gradient here, like so. And that's okay. So now the bottom part will be further away than the top part. And that looks good because when you are looking down at grass, the bottom part is further away from you and it's also in the shadow, so a lot darker. Let's make it just a tad darker. Oh, like so. Could have painted it in as well, but well, I want to use the gradient sometimes. Now let's save this image. So let's save it in the textures folder. I already had one there because I was practicing before. And then save your document, do a save as maybe. And then there we go. Let's call it grass particles and hit save as. And that's it for this lecture. See you in the next, where we will make a particle object. Bye bye. Bye bye.